Thank you very much. We are CoinNewsExtra.com. We are media partners of the all that the multi event that just passed on. We are from Nigeria, based in Nigeria. We report news about blockchain, cryptocurrency, fintech. We also do live coverage. They advertise and also help in organizing hackathons and seminars all over Nigeria and Africa. So we are happy to. Good morning, sir. Can you just introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, okay. So, I am Steve Tendon. I spent half life as an IT software engineering guy and the other half as a management consultant, helping organizations to improve their performance, especially when it comes to knowledge work, software engineering, and product development. And in this capacity, I have always been looking into emerging technologies and how emerging technologies can help companies to make better businesses. Of course, having this purview, I discovered quite early the blockchain. Actually, I knew about the Bitcoin since the very early days in 2009, 2010, but did not get myself involved other than looking at it as a curious technology and a brilliant way to resolve decentralized computing and especially the double spend problem. But for me, that was just a curiosity. Then in 2015, after a series of events, I stumbled into Vitalik Buterin's white paper and discovered that Ethereum had a new dimension, which was the notion of decentralized computation, smart contracts, in short. That made me realize that the whole information technology, software engineering, and digital businesses would be affected, and I decided to go more seriously into understanding the technology and advising how it could be used. It then just so happened, almost by happenstance, that in the summer of 2016, I was going to talk at a conference here in Malta, a conference aiming at the financial services industry. I was going to deliver a talk about the Bitcoin, probably one of the very, very early conferences on the topic, to that kind of audience.
Okay.
Yes?
Okay. Continue, sir. I'm hearing you.
Yeah. So in that conference in the morning, before the conference started, when people were still networking and sipping their coffees, I was introduced to the Minister of Economy, who was going to deliver the keynote speech just a few minutes after being introduced to him. And I didn't quite know myself what to say, because of course, the ministry of a country has a completely different perspective on priorities and issues than business people with whom I was more accustomed to dealing with. Long story short, I told him like an elevator pitch about how the blockchain could bring lots and lots of benefits. I gave him a long list of benefits for the country and the economy of the country. And that was enough for him to ask me there on the spot if I could come and see him the week after. I did that, and even there, long story short, I presented the blockchain technology to him in a more structured way, and he was so fascinated that he just asked me if I could design a national strategy for this topic. And of course, I accepted the invitation, the assignment, and started working on that. This was like September 2016, more or less. And mind you, the focus was on the blockchain technology, not so much on crypto. But the outcome of my draft work was a strategy document, and that strategy document contained six projects or focus areas, strategic areas, which were the number one was the usage of blockchain technologies in the public services sector. Number two was the institution of education, research and development, and basically spreading of the know-how around blockchain technologies. Number three was this idea of having a blockchain regulator, as I wrote at that time, and eventually this became the MDIA, the Malta Digital Innovation Authority. So its mandate clearly grew from the initial vision to encompass even other things beyond the blockchain. And in fact, now this regulator is looking into artificial intelligence, IoT, and who knows what else comes into the future. The fourth project was what probably most people would be expecting, because it was about regulating cryptocurrencies. And in the meantime, since the strategy had been approved, and I started working with the National Task Force on the blockchain. In the meantime, we had seen the meteoric rise of the Bitcoin valuation and the phenomenon of the ICOs. So there was a lot of expectation on that front. In fact, other countries moved quicker than Malta. They probably reacted in panic to what was happening, and we saw the likes of Luxembourg, Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, Gibraltar, and others coming out with very, very quick regulations on the cryptocurrency space alone. But in Malta, we were heading towards the vision of the blockchain as an enabling technology, and crypto was just one of these six projects. The fifth project was about identity and e-residency. We had been looking at Estonia, and were clearly inspired by what Estonia had done with e-residency, but we wanted to extend that notion to cover the identity of not only of people, but also identity of things, wherein the blockchain probably will play in the future a very important role. And the sixth and final project was about smart governance, or the idea to apply smart contract technology and the notion of decentralized computation to the exercise of governance for the benefit of the country and the regulators. And today, this notion is more widespread, and it's probably better known as RegTech or SupTech, supervisory technologies. So those were the six projects, and now in 2019 we can say that at least four of them are either done and delivered or are in due course and will continue the development. In fact, we have blockchain being used in public services. The Maltese students will have their academic credentials and records stored on the blockchain. Malta was the first country to do this at a national level. We have the registry of companies, which is being put on the blockchain. There are plans to put national health records on the blockchain, and even others. In terms of education, you might have read that very recently, just a few months ago, the University of Malta started offering a master's degree in blockchain and distributed ledger technologies, and that degree is like interdisciplinary. So it is both for people coming from like an IT technology background, but also for people who might have a master's of business administrations, or people who have like a law background, precisely because the blockchain is so interdisciplinary. In terms of the project of the regulator, well, I just mentioned before, we have the MDIA, the Malta Digital Innovation Authority. It's a unique regulator. No other country has anything like it. It's a first of its kind. And the purpose is to bring like confidence in the technology and the operators behind the technology. I might say more about that later. And then, of course, the cryptocurrency aspects, the token economy has been regulated with the Virtual Financial Assets Act. There was a third law that came into effect, and it was the ITASA, the Innovative Technologies Arrangements and Services Act, and that is really the founding stone to how can I say make the blockchain technology fit into a legislative framework, and it is also the basis for a fourth law that started off from a proposal I did in February, March 2018, if I remember correctly, about recognizing legal personality to DIOs. Now, that was my proposal. In the meantime, the notion has been debated and mangled through many iterations with lots of people giving their feedback, and now it's taking form in a different way, but yet it's probably the most advanced law you will ever see to date on how to deal with decentralized autonomous entities, even though we will restrict the autonomy in a certain sense, but it goes in that direction. So that was like the long story, and well, in the meantime, I have also done other things which I might want to mention. I was the first founder and chairman of the Malta Blockchain Association. I am part of the Maltese Mirror Committee of the ISO TC 307 standards projects to define a standard for blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. And maybe last but not least, I have also started off here in Malta a business club. It's called the My BlockchainIslandClub, and it welcomes anyone who has a business interest or a livelihood interest in blockchain technologies. We bring together like investors, entrepreneurs, startuppers, engineers, programmers, and the legal corporate service providers. We run meetups every month, and we have an online platform where we coordinate internationally. And yeah, what else? I'm also writing a book about blockchain, the book of Blockchain Strategies, and I think that will come out sometime during next year.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. Can you just in brief? Can you just say briefly how the Malta IBC was? Just how was the program in Malta?
So the Malta summit was has evolved like the whole industry, because the first edition came out in November of 2018. It was exactly during that edition that the three laws were put in effect. So the November edition of the Malta Blockchain Summit will be always very, very special, because it's like the birthday of the legislation coming into effect. But since 2018 until now, it's only a year, but things have changed dramatically, and you can even sense that by being on the ground and visiting the conference, both in terms of looking at the companies who are exhibiting their offerings on the floor, and the audience who's coming, and of course the speakers. In 2018, it was like the whole industry. It was overwhelmed by optimism and unrealistic expectations that probably came out of the whole ICO craze that we saw during that that period of 2017 2018. At that time, there were many startups and companies proposing projects which honestly did not even need a blockchain to function, but the blockchain was used just as a buzzword to attract attention and probably, I would say, scam people who would invest in funny ICOs. But at that time, nobody could really determine if an ICO was good or bad. We have even the opposite cases where some people were proposing very valid projects, but then were hit negatively by how the whole ICO market collapsed. So maybe they did collect nominally millions worth of ether, and then when they had to start to develop their projects, well, number one, the ether collapsed, and number two, nobody wanted to buy ether, so they could not change the ether into euros and dollars and keep sustaining their running expenses, with the result that maybe good companies had to close operations. This also explains, why that event was in 2018 was so important, because with the advent of the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, Malta started to make it very clear that rules must be there and must be followed, so that if someone offers a white paper, the white paper cannot just promise the blue sky. It must actually give something of value to investors or to the users of the services. And that has sort of set the stage here. We have seen lots of companies leaving the island, not because the island is a bad place for business, but because it is a serious place for business. I think this is a very important distinction. Of course, there are things which can be done better. As always, there is space for improvement. The legislator was very aware of this when we started this off and when this was announced in February of 2018. There was this notion that we are going into new ground, so we might be bound to make mistakes, but we are willing to do that because we know we can. We have the ability to make corrections in due course and improve quicker than any other jurisdiction. In fact, right now, some of the provisions of the laws might be reviewed and revised in the light of the experience that we had during this year. So going back to the conference question, if we compare the 2018 edition to this one, what we see now is that the companies on the ground are much more serious. They have much more robust projects. The audience is also much more picky. There is much more knowledge. Even the talks on stage are much more informed than what they were in 2018. So even if the attendance has decreased, I think it went from 8,000 to 6,000 people or something like that, I would say that definitely the quality has increased dramatically.
Okay, thank you very much. The Malta Summit was great. Thank you very much. Mr. T, going next to the question, checking on your next platform project you're working on, what brought about the Blockchain Island? And just tell us brief the mission and mission of the Blockchain Island.
So the next project I'm working on, or I've been working on since the end of 2018, is is with another island, or islands in the plural, because I'm working with the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and that is in order to establish the first ever, I would say, crypto fiat currency, and this might need some explanation. But it gives me like the reason to reflect on the meaning of Blockchain Island, because I literally wrote the words Blockchain Island in early October of 2016 in the strategy document. So I think I am entitled to explain what the vision is about. Now, Malta has gone in the direction, and in fact, the promotional effort, so to say, the branding effort of using the name Blockchain Island has worked wonderfully, and Malta is ahead of anyone else. So it cannot be denied that it is the effective blockchain island. Can we say this, on planet Earth? And I want to stress this, on planet Earth, because my vision originally, remember that I come from a background of management consulting and organizational performance, where the notion of constraints management is key. And as always, when you're running a business, you do not have infinite constraints. Infinite resources. You have constraints. You're limited, and you have to maximize what you can get out of what you have. Now, you've seen Malta. You know it's a tiny island in the middle of the Mediterranean. It is overpopulated. It has no actual resources, so it has to resort to resourcefulness, if you allow me the expression. And Malta has a long history with this respect, whereby introducing legislation in various fields, from maritime to financial services, to trusts, to of course iGaming, it created a beneficial business environment that would attract business to Malta. And this is happening with the blockchain as well. But with the blockchain, there is another opportunity which I think has not been fully explored or taken. And this opportunity is what the real vision of the Blockchain Island is about. For me, the Blockchain Island was not and is not a physical space on planet Earth. For me, the Blockchain Island is a new economic space in the crypto sphere, which is untied from any material territory. And so what is the connection with the Republic of the Marshall Islands? Now, here I could expand in many directions, but I just offer one thought. I don't know how much you are familiar with the Marshall Islands, but it's a place where the population has been exposed to lots of exploitation and suffering, primarily because of two factors. One is the atomic testings conducted by the United States after World War II. For over a decade, they were dropping atomic bombs on the Bikini Atoll, and that has created a huge issue of nuclear pollution and waste and contamination. Many people from the Marshall Islands have already had the experience of having to leave their country, the ground under their feet, to go and survive somewhere else. Now, I think it was in 1960 sometime, or 70s, I don't remember the dates exactly, but the Marshall Islands reached an agreement with the USA. It was the Compact Agreement, whereby the USS was going to pay back in almost like a sort of damage recognition. Notwithstanding that they probably have not paid back all what they promised, the fact is that by 2023, this stream of payment is going to finish. So it's a huge problem because it's like the equivalent of 30% of the country's GDP. Now talk about monetary instability. If 30% of your GDP evaporates, you have an existential problem. The second issue is that the Marshall Islands are a very low land. They are like the emergence of coral-based atolls, and the average elevation above sea level is like 2 meters. So a stormy day means that you are under the water. And the combination of rising sea levels because of climate change, and also another phenomenon, which is the acidification of the sea, which will erode the coral and basically make the islands collapse, bring us to this situation where a country is about to lose 30% of GDP and at the same time is at very high risk of disappearing into the sea, like Atlantis. So imagine that, a country that knows that it is at risk of disappearing. So that is the motivation to create the SOV, the sovereign crypto fiat currency, and that underlying blockchain of the SOV currency would also become the digital infrastructure onto which the Marshall Islands could potentially, I mean, this is the idea, this is the vision. Who knows if it will happen, but this is the vision of the blockchain island. So onto which the country could potentially bring over all of their public services. So anything you know that a country is doing in a public office would happen digitally on this blockchain. And why would you have a blockchain? Well, precisely because you cannot have like a national digital infrastructure that sits on a server farm somewhere, because that server farm is at risk of being submerged by the rising sea level. And of course, a country cannot risk having its fundamental digital assets on a private server farm like Google or Facebook. That would not make sense. One day, maybe Mr. Zuckerberg would wake up and he wouldn't like the Marshall Islands and just switch it off. That's too much of a risk. So what is the alternative? It's to put it on a public permissionless blockchain spread all over the world, which cannot be shut down. And there, all of a sudden, your jurisdiction becomes not material physical, but it becomes virtual. It exists in the cryptosphere, and possibly the Marshall Islands will be the first country that actually achieves, implements the full vision of the blockchain island. So let's say we have two blockchain islands. The one on planet Earth, which with no doubt is the leading jurisdiction of Malta, and then there is this vision of the true blockchain island, which is in the cryptosphere. Maybe it will be the Marshall Islands that will get there first.
Wow, that's great. Thank you very much. So let's go down to your educational background. What you study in higher education, did it relate to what you are doing now?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I hear quite badly. You talk about educational.
I said your educational, going back down to your educational background.
Yeah.
What you study in higher institution, is it what you are practicing now? Because most people that are into blockchain is mostly self-taught, so we want to know.
Oh.
What you study in higher education,
So, yeah,
is related to blockchain.
So yes, of course, having like I would say in the previous millennium, which is like the Stone Age of IT, I was a software engineer. So I have written books about C++ other technologies. So I can get around the whole notion of distributed computation and algorithms and all the trade-offs you have when you come to decentralized systems and you need to reach like the technical consensus protocol, how that works out. So that was like an unfair advantage, if you wish, that I had compared to other people who might be in the management space or in the legal space. But then, as I mentioned, in 2015, I decided that this was going to be the blockchain was going to be a fundamental component in the future of the world's economy. Yes, I decided to look more into it as much as possible, and I actually took 2 courses with Professor Shearer. First, at the MIT, there was a FinTech and Future Commerce course where blockchain was one of the topics. And as a matter of fact, if you remember what I said, that when I met the Minister of Economy, I gave like an elevator pitch about the benefits for a country. That was not coincidental, even though the speech, the talk I gave him there was an elevator pitch and it was like improvised on the spot. I was all covered in terms of the theory behind, because at the FinTech course at MIT, one of the assignments was precisely that, to look like 10 years into the future and see what the blockchain would have brought to the global economy. So had I not done that course at MIT, I would certainly not have been able to deliver that pitch on the blockchain island as we know it today. Would not have happened. Then later in 2018, I saw that Professor Shear with Oxford offered a course on blockchain strategies, and of course I had already designed a strategy for Malta, but I was just too curious to see how that course would actually tackle the topic, and took that course as well. And that was also a very important course. I wouldn't say that I learned anything new or too much new, because in the meantime I've been working on the topic myself a lot. Of course, having to prepare the strategy for Malta, it was like a professional duty to do that. But it was very important because of the network that came out. You know, all people who do the Oxford Blockchain Strategy course are somehow key people in the whole blockchain space, and through them and with them many opportunities and venues have been developed. And I'm also told now that in the current editions of the Oxford course, the case of Malta is taken as a reference study, and that, of course, I'm very proud of that.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you very much. So, do you have any plan of sending this good work in other parts of the world, like Africa, Asia, and America?
Well, of course. I mean, I've been thinking about this in so many different dimensions that I'm sure I could give good advice to any legislator who or business organization, for that matter, who wants to look at the blockchain. Now, notwithstanding that I'm working very closely now with the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and I'm still active in the think tanks around the legal personality, the fourth law of Malta. Maybe what is the most compelling factor in answering your question is that I'm writing this book, which is called Blockchain Strategies, and I am like dissecting the blockchain technologies in ways that you will not find in the industry. In fact, I'm starting off by examining what you have out there. I'm looking at the frameworks, for instance, from from McKinsey. I'm of course citing very much the Oxford blockchain strategy framework, with which I'm very familiar. I'm looking at the Cambridge framework, which came later, but was like a reaction or a competitor, if you want, to the Oxford one, but which is also a very, very good and has other kinds of deep insights. I'm looking at works that are being done at IBM, not only the Hyperledger folks, but other people who are more into the strategic business modeling of blockchains. And all of these are all extremely valuable, but they are like missing those components and elements that I developed myself and that I used to put in place the Maltese strategy, and now also helping the Republic of the Marshall Islands. And basically, it's I call it the blockchain innovative forces framework. So I'm trying to figure out what are the things, the capabilities, features, attributes, behaviors that a blockchain provides us, which were not available before. Are the things we can do today thanks to the blockchain that we could not do before? And with this, I like define this framework, and I think it is useful for anybody looking at the blockchain, whether it is like a small startup of the proverbial two guys in the garage, up to a multinational that might have hundreds of thousands of employees who are looking to this, and of course to countries who want to have new economic strategies based on these technologies.
Okay, that's great. So you are saying that are you saying that there will be the seminar event that happened in Malta in other parts of the world, like Africa, Asia, or America?
Sorry, can you repeat? I hear very bad voice. Please repeat slowly.
Okay. So you are saying that this summit, we can have something like African summit, or the reputation of the Malta blockchain summit in other countries, other regions.
Well, I think so the format can certainly be repeated. Now, I'm not in charge of the summit. For that, you will need to reach out to Iman Pulis, who started off the summits actually even before the blockchain with the iGaming sector, and now he's heading to Manila, because the spring edition, 2020 spring edition of the AIBC summit will not be hosted in Malta, but in Manila, and I think that is brilliant, because the Southeast Asia is a highly densely populated region with high mobile phone adoption, and therefore a prominent place where to deploy blockchain solutions for consumers. In Asia, we have already many places where you have summits like Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, and Korea, but Manila is like right there in the middle, and it's not being covered. So, like, I applaud Iman to take this step and bring the experience he has in creating these amazing events here in Malta, and put them in practice in Asia. Of course, now speak to him if you want to bring the summit to Africa. Maybe that can happen as well.
Wow, that would be great. Thank you very much. We will get in contact with you. So thank you very much. We are very very happy how you are expressing everything concisely. So what can you say about the regulations in Malta? Because I believe that's one of the greatest challenge blockchains industry are having. So what can you say about the regulation in Malta and other rest of the world?
Well, I think the reflection I did at the beginning is still true, that the other countries reacted in panic to the ICOs and created first very sketchy regulations about the cryptocurrency space. And that's what we are seeing still today. Even if you look at places like Liechtenstein, which announced this summer that they have a blockchain law, blockchain regulation. Well, if you compare that to Malta, it's simply not true. What they are doing is still confined to the, let's say, financial transaction space. The only, let's say, novel aspect of the Liechtenstein regulation is that they allow, like they regulate, recognize, and allow for the tokenization of basically anything. So that's it. You tokenize something, and then you are in some sort of regulated space, but the underlying notion is still that of the transaction. It's still the Bitcoin model. It's still the decentralized storage of value where a number goes from my pocket to your pocket, and that number might represent anything of value. But it's still that. It's a transaction. In Malta, we are far ahead of anyone else because we are looking at not decentralized storage of value. Yes, we do, but we are not only looking at that. We are in particular looking at the huge systemic and social, economic, and political impact of decentralized computation. This is what all other jurisdictions are totally missing right now. We start to see some things evolving in the states of like Wyoming and some other states in the US, but their approach is a bit different. They are trying to use like existing legal structures to wrap around an instance on a blockchain. So basically, nothing really new because you're still using existing, let's say, old world, an old world perspective, wherein you sort of shoehorn and make the blockchain fit in, but you are not really looking into what it means to have decentralized computation and possibly, potentially decentralized autonomous organizations and entities. And Malta is going in that direction. The fact that we have law number 2 and law number 3. So let me just remind you which laws are which. Number 1 is the Virtual Financial Assets Act. That covers the cryptocurrency and the transaction part. That's what the other countries are reaching up to, and maybe some of them might even do it better, but that's it. Malta has law number 2, which is the institution of the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, whose purpose is that to certify that the solutions, the technical solutions built on top of blockchain technologies are what they claim to be. If a white paper promises something, or if a prospectus offering promises something, well, that something has to be visible and present in the code that implements the technology solution. The MDAI will certify that. Law number 3 is the Innovative Technology Arrangements and Services Act, and basically it recognizes the role of the economic actors that either develop or provide develop solutions or provide services on top of blockchain technologies. So, for instance, if you are an exchange, and there are many exchanges coming to Malta, you would deal with all your crypto transaction issues with law number 1, and that would be regulated by the Malta Financial Services Authority, the MFSA. But you would also have the option and sometimes the obligation to get the software of your exchange certified by the MDIA. This is something that the other jurisdictions do not do. They would just care about the financial transactions being proper, and there's no avoidance of that, especially in Europe, because in Europe the whole financial services sector, no country in Europe has any option. They have the obligation to implement the directives from Europe, MiFID II and whatever they are called. So the exchange would have to comply to those aspects, no matter where in Europe, and in Malta it would be the Malta Financial Services Authority. But then the software of exchange here can be certified by the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, the MDIA. What does this mean? It means that an exchange running out of Malta will have much higher guarantees that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and therefore the consumers should find more peace of mind in dealing with the exchanges of Malta, and presumably also more guarantees, because the capital requirements to set up these currency exchanges, cryptocurrency exchanges in Malta, are much higher than in other places. Now, of course, high capital requirements does not guarantee the absence of bad players, but at least it sets a very high bar for anyone to want to come in.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, you really said a lot. But the last but not the least, in 5 years' time, where do you see the future of AI and blockchain technology?
What a question. I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't. So we can only see trajectories and trends. I think there is a lot of hype surrounding AI now, maybe as it was with blockchain 2 years ago, and probably that has to be put into more realistic terms. Having said that, no doubt that AI will have humongous impact. I still believe that people are more, how can we say, emotionally moved by the topic of AI rather than blockchain, because AI, it's artificial intelligence, and we believe that we are the only intelligent beings in the whole universe. Who knows if that is true? But it's like an emotional thing. Like before, we believed that the Earth was at the center of everything, and people were burnt because they had a different belief. And then Galileo said, no, it's really, or Copernicus said that it was really the sun that was at the center, at least of this part of the universe. So AI provokes like this emotional reaction that makes us feel uncomfortable and uneasy. But if we want to look at threats to a well-functioning society, I think the major threat does not come from AI, but comes from blockchain technologies, and even more so if blockchain technologies might be combined with AI, because there is this huge debate out, and it comes directly out of the conversation around the fourth law about autonomous and automated entities, and the general misconception is that AI is autonomous because it makes decisions with its own mind, and you might not be able to get a reasonable explanation, and you might even be less able to understand what it's doing. While on the other hand, the blockchain is all deterministic, it's all hard-coded programs. You know exactly what is going to happen, so it's not autonomous, but it's only quote automated. I think this is a huge misconception, because it does not make the distinction about what kind of autonomy we are talking here. So yes, AI has autonomy, and I would define that as decisional autonomy. It makes decisions on its own account. But if you have a self-driving car that goes berserk, it might produce lethal damage, as we have already witnessed. But it's a physical thing. If it really goes off the tangent, you can materially take it down. In the extreme case, you blow it up. No, it's an extreme image, but an AI which has a physical embodiment, well, you can destroy it. The blockchain, especially when it comes to these DAOs, decentralized autonomous organization. They contain the word autonomous inside their definition. But this is a different kind of autonomy. It's not decisional autonomy. There are two other kinds of autonomies we're talking about here. One is operational autonomy, because while the algorithms of the blockchain are deterministic and you know exactly what is happening, the fact that they are running on a global decentralized infrastructure means that you cannot take them down. So yes, you know what is happening, but you cannot stop it. It's operationally autonomous. And the second element is that they are also economically autonomous. Now look at the Bitcoin protocol. It's a protocol, so it doesn't stir the same emotion as an artificial intelligence, but it is working. It has been working for 10 years. No one has been able to take it down. Not the CIA, not the hackers that would like to put their hands on the billions of bitcoins, and not even the central banks who hate Bitcoin. So it is really an autonomous thing. But at the same time, it's quote quote employing the miners. It's employing the miners, so the miners get a reward. It's almost as if they got a salary. So maybe we should start to think about this Bitcoin protocol no more as a software artifact, as an artificial thing of software, but as a software entity, because it has these traits that it's next to impossible to take down. It's employing people, and it has an impact, an economic impact on us human beings. And it's just a protocol. Imagine what will happen in the next few years when very much more sophisticated models of automated interaction will take shape and form on this blockchain. And that's why we have this fourth law, where we are considering all these kinds of autonomy. And we can even see that in the future there will be blockchain DAOs that will employ AI algorithms. And at that point you will have decisional, operational, and economic autonomy that create new kinds of entities. Those are no longer software. Software are like the building blocks, carbon molecules are our human body building blocks. Software will be the building blocks of these new kinds of entities. And the reflection here is also that presumably a very huge amount of the world economy, the world GDP, will live on a blockchain. And once a blockchain, who knows which blockchain it will be? Maybe the Bitcoin, maybe the Ethereum, maybe another one. There are many new interesting blockchains on the horizon. Well, when a blockchain will be carrying trillions of dollars of worth, there is no way you can roll back and backpedal or do forks. Forks will be impossible when there is so much economic value on the blockchain. The economic forces will just prevent forks from happening. I'm not talking about technical upgrade forks; those will happen. Everyone will agree that they are positive. But it's the kind of fork that we saw when we had the famous DAO hack in 2016, I think it was, and you know what's happened there. A fork effectively took place, and the new one was called Ethereum Classic. I think that was a one-off. In the future, and also notwithstanding the many forks we've seen of in Bitcoin, but in the future, when the blockchain will become like a fundamental infrastructure of the whole economy, like the internet protocol is today, then these games of forking will not play out well. So we must deal with the vision that we will have new entities who have, again, decisional autonomy, operational autonomy, and economic autonomy. We have to give them legal personality so that they become good citizens.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Steve Tendon. Thank you very much for your time. So, sir, is there any other thing you want to what you want to say to us?
Well, I mean, the only thing I would like invite people to join, like my hobby project, so to say. It's something I enjoy a lot, and it's the My Blockchain Island Club initiative. As I mentioned before, it's a business club for people who have an economic interest or want to have a professional economic interest in blockchain technologies. We are online. Maybe you can put this in some show notes at my.blockchainisland.club. I repeat that, my.blockchainisland.club. And we are running like meetups every month here in Malta, and probably in 2020 we will expand internationally and start to have local chapters. So if you maybe want to have a local chapter where you are, now get in touch with me. We can see how to make it happen.
Okay, great. We are really open for that, open for partnership and to enlarge. So, in your blockchain island, is there a particular people that need to be in it, or is it open for everyone?
Well, right now it's still like my personal pet project, so it's open for anyone. And of course, no, if this thing is growing, I would probably need to enroll someone to help with me, or find other people who share like the same passion and values and want to give me a helping hand. So far, it's been very fun and very rewarding. I have members from literally all over the world, and when they come, like now, we had our meetup during the AIBC summit.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see people coming from from Uruguay to Japan, and anything in between, and above and below, and it's all like uh, the same kind of enthusiasm for this technology, and the opportunities it will bring about in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much. We draw the curtain of this interview with Mr. Steve Tendon with a light from CoinNewsExtra. Thank you very much for your time, for your accurate and very brilliant response. Thank you very much.
Well,
So we are done. Yeah, we are
thank
done
you
with
for
it.
inviting me to this interview, and it's been a great pleasure.